Do you feel stuck in your career or life? Is fear holding you back from chasing your dreams? Do you suffer from FOMO? If you said yes, this podcast episode on the secret to mastering fear so it's never a liability again is for you. I'm your host, Anthony Harcher, clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today we'll be chatting with Stephanie Puente on fear. Stephanie is a transformational coach, professional speaker, and the president of CoreFactor Transformative Coaching. In this episode, we'll be uncovering the formula for how we can create results, learn how to recognize the disguise and seduction of fear and how it keeps us stuck. Furthermore, learn practices to reframe fear and use it as a stepping stone towards growth, and gain some tips on how to starve your fear and how to grow your courage. Before we tackle fear, here is a little bit more about Stephanie. Since 2014, Stephanie has helped business owners and professionals to hone in on their authentic life path and to empower and to create the life that they want to live. Having earned multiple certifications from the Brave Thinking Institute, BTI, she has also amassed 25 years of study in personal development. Backed by a professional career that includes 2 decades in marketing and communications, business administration, and event planning. Stephanie is the graduate of the University of Texas and continues to invest in advanced training and education through BTI. She has been happily married for 20 years to a lovely husband, Sebastian, and has 2 beautiful daughters, Sofia and Paloma. So welcome, Stephanie. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Anthony. I am doing well, and I'm so happy and honored and grateful for this opportunity to be here with you on this podcast. Welcome to all the listeners. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to connect with you today. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and we're very grateful in return to have you and your expertise on this subject of fear. But before we get on with the questioning, I'd love to know your experience with fear. And, do you have any phobias? And has fear held you back in your life?
Absolutely, it has. And I love what you just said. What is my expertise with fear? I was thinking about the difference between being an expert and having expertise. And I have a lot of expertise in navigating fear. Most of my life, I've had dreams, for the last 25, 30 years, things that I wanted to do, things like studying abroad, moving to New York City, moving across country to be with my boyfriend at the time, taking courageous steps, wanting to run marathons, never having done anything like that before, starting businesses, getting married, becoming a mom, so many things that have fear has been a companion on the journey, as we will talk about today, because really understanding that as long as we're growing, as long as we are stepping towards what it is that we want, fear is going to be there. And so really learning how to continue to live life as we lean into what's important to us, coming from an empowered place, and how to really overcome and override those parts of ourselves that, tell us those beliefs, I'm not enough, I'm not capable enough, I'm not smart enough. What if it doesn't work out? What if something bad happens? What if my parents don't support me? All the many ways that our fear can talk to us, that can dial us down and keep us right where we are. So all along that journey, as well as, just taking steps in the career and the path that I've been on to express myself in the ways that I have, fear has been right there with me. And so I've really learned how to just put my arm around that part of myself and take that part with me, having it without it having me, so that I can keep moving forward. And definitely what we'll be talking about today will be in service of sharing that with you and how you can do that as well, moving forward from here.
Can't wait to hear that, because you certainly embrace fear through your story, which is fantastic, because often some people can have a life where they're just essentially fear controls them, and they don't do anything, and it can lead on to many health implications. But before we get on to what people can do to manage their fear, what is fear in itself?
Well, that's a great question. And I would love to also take a side step and talk first for a moment about how fear plays a part in the results that we create in our lives, and take a moment to really understand how do we create results in our lives, and really recognizing that the first cause of the results that we have in our lives starts with us. It starts with the thoughts that we are thinking. And the thoughts that we think have an energy to them. So if I'm thinking about, what if it goes wrong? What if I can't do it? What if I'm not enough? That generates inside myself a feeling of constriction, anxiety, doubt. My heart might start beating really fast and I feel constricted. So recognizing that our thoughts generate feelings inside of us, and our feelings affect our physiology. And we feel very different when we're thinking thoughts of, I can, I am enough, there is enough, or empowered statements. What if it did work out? What if it could be easy? What if there is a way? And maybe there is a way, even though I don't know. What if I just stay open to that? And when I think about that, I feel more open. I feel more expansive. So our thoughts affect our feelings. Our feelings then get transmitted into the action that we take. And we take very different action when we're overwhelmed, afraid, fearful, doubtful, or constricted. Oftentimes we take no action. As you were saying a moment ago, we stay stuck, and it is our actions that create our results. So, and for many of us, we have been trained to really look outside of ourselves, to think that what's happening in the facts and the conditions are the cause of why we feel the way we feel, why we believe about ourselves and what we think is possible for us based on all that's happening outside of us. And we try to change facts and conditions. But the facts and the conditions are a reflection of the thoughts that we've been thinking. And whatever we're focused on, that's what we're going to see more of, because whatever we're giving our attention to, that's where our thoughts generate from, and that's what we're flowing our energy to. So as you begin to take steps forward in growth, moving forward from here, knowing that the facts and the conditions are what they are, it's an opportunity to begin to notice what you're noticing and put your attention on A, what it is that you do want, and B, thoughts that are supportive and empowering. And as you focus on that you'll feel more expanded. Ideas for actions will begin to come to you. And as you take those actions, you can trust results will follow. And in answer to your question, what is fear? As we're moving forward in growth, I invite us to consider and realize that it's part of our human nature, that there's a part of us that we are more than just, our bodies, our personalities, that there is this life, that is with us, that is breathing us, that is breathing our heart, that has us here today. And whether we want to consider it and call it life, call it energy, call it source, that this life is with us, and that this life is happening everywhere, and that it is seeking for a greater, freer, fuller expression. And it's happening in each one of us. And when we lean into what we would really love to do or experience, run a marathon, have a loving relationship, start a business, become a chef, travel to a particular location, and we feel expansive in the thought of that is life expanding through us. And so when we have these ideas for something, there's that part of us that absolutely wants to move forward in growth. But then we've got part of our human nature is to, stay right where we are. And that there's a part of us that comes up that really, there's a part of us as we recognize that growth, and then everything that is unlike, me taking that trip or me writing that book comes up. The beliefs about, well, you can't write the book. You didn't do well ever in school in English, or you're not a good writer, or how could you run a marathon? You've always been a couch potato. So everything that's unlike that desire that we have, it rises up, not to keep us stuck, but it's really an opportunity to carry us forward in growth. But we've got some old ideas, we've got some programming that is really designed to keep us safe, and it argues for the status quo, if you will. It really is a part of us that wants things to stay the same. And so recognizing, that this is simply an indication that I'm stepping forward in growth, and there's a part of me that comes up not to keep me stuck, but that this is an opportunity to transform that and move forward in the presence of it, to discover that capacity that each one of us has to become, do, and have and be more of what we would truly love to be. So fear is a companion on the journey, and it's and another way of also thinking about this is recognizing that every single one of us has an operating system that we live from. And our operating system is made up of beliefs. And another name for this is our paradigms. And we've got many beliefs that are expansive and freeing and support us. But then we've got some outdated old ideas. We've got some programming from how our parents may have raised us, or experiences that we had in early childhood where we decided and made decisions about ourselves, about what we believe is possible, what we believe we can do or have or experience. And it's all part of our programming, just like there's, wiring in the computer, if you will. And when we take steps beyond that programming, it rises up. And on our own, it's hard for us to see that those are limiting beliefs, if you will. And there's a very strong gravitational pull to that familiar way of thinking, because that's what we've always thought. And because we hear it in our head, we believe it to be true. But having that desire for whatever that growth is for each one of us, that challenges that programming. And that's an opportunity with awareness that we can begin to change those paradigms and install some new, more expansive ways of thinking to make welcome those new results. So those are some ideas in terms of supporting us and understanding, how our thoughts impact our results, how we can begin to take our attention off, facts and conditions, off the fear, and begin to focus on what we do want and think about how we can do it, and recognize that those old beliefs are coming up not to keep us stuck, but it's an opportunity to release those and begin to think in new ways so that we can make welcome those new results in our lives.
Yeah, it's that very much, from what I gathered from what you were saying, it's that alarm system that, alerts us to, that there's something going on. Listen to me, listen to the alarm, pay attention to it. Don't just let that alarm just keep ringing and you're just ignoring it. Just pay attention to it. Is that alarm because, so I guess looking at it and what's causing this, and is that cause something that I'm running away from, or is that cause potentially going to serve me if I see it as an opportunity to grow? Because I'm thinking, those alarm situations where it's been triggered by a past trauma, which is the brain said to it, well, remember that past trauma. If you get any signals from the environment of that past trauma, avoid that, area or situation, or and so, that they're the, I guess, alarm signals that protect us. But then we also have, as you mentioned, these alarm signals that aren't serving us. They're really holding us back. They're not protecting us, and that we need to, find ways to see that signal as an opportunity to then develop on, from that, as opposed to constantly running away from it and ignoring it. So, how can someone, if they've got this, this fear, that I'm not good enough, or, I can't do that, based on their upbringing. And you mentioned rewiring and the way they think and stuff like that. Is there any tools that someone can help, like this self-help guide as to reprogramming that? Is there any tips you've got on that? Yes.
And that's a great question. And It's a good thing that we have these alarms going off inside of us. And so using our power of discernment, and when we do have a clear vision for what it is that we want, even if we have had experiences in the past, whether there was, situations that occurred in business or situations that occurred, in relationships where, we experienced some failure, we experienced some, distress in our relationships, and we've got that fear about putting ourselves out there again. When we have a vision of what it is that we would love, that we would truly love, there's a new idea for this next business that I would love to, contribute to, or I would truly long to have a loving relationship. And even though my past experience has been this one way, I'm open to believing that I truly can allow for and make welcome a partnership that, fulfills me. And so when we have that vision, we can discern, is this action that I'm about to take, go to the party, put myself on Match.com, or take steps to put together the business plan, or go to the networking group and start sharing with others. Here's what I'm doing. Yes, this is uncomfortable, but this action is, I'm willing to be uncomfortable in the interest of growth, because this step is leading me in service of what it is that's important to me. And so how do we, recognize those signals, and what are the tips that we can do to really override it when we feel that part of us, afraid, but we know it's in service of growth? The ways that our paradigms will come up is through a few different ways. And the first is distraction. So, let's say there's, there's some new, health steps that you want to take, whether it be going to bed early, or you want to, start eating more fruits and vegetables, or you want to add in drinking water, or there's a 5K that you want to run, and you've decided, I'm doing this thing. And then boom, something comes up, and, I need to, instead of going on that run, let me get the laundry done first, or, let me get the dishes done first, or, 5 other things came up and I didn't make it out for my run today, or a bunch of stuff happened at 10:30 and I ended up going to bed at midnight, so things will come up, not to keep us, but here, it's actually a qualifier. How committed am I to getting to bed early, to incorporating water into my diet, or going to the networking group and sharing my message? So distraction is something to keep an eye out for, and staying committed to that action step. Another way that the alarm signals can come up to dial us back down is what's called dissuasion, where we hear from this voice inside of us, and sometimes it's disguised as very practical, logical thinking, and it will argue for why you can't do what it is that you want to do. Well, you've tried, many, times to run a 5K, or you've endeavored to, start a meditation practice, and you always end up stopping with it, or, you tried that business before and you failed, or the last 3 relationships ended, painfully. What makes you think, and it's very seductive. And we may find things in our facts and our conditions to seduce us into thinking that is the truth. And so we want to keep an eye out for that dissuasion, that part of ourselves that really is arguing to keep things the same, because our paradigms, they act like a thermostatic setting. We've got a certain temperature that we're used to operating from, if you will. I like that analogy. And we know with our thermostat, when it gets too hot, the thermostat kicks in to cool the temperature back down to 72 degrees. And same thing, the heat will kick in to bring it back up to 72 degrees. Well, I invite us to consider we've got a thermostatic setting that we've been used to operating from. And when it gets challenged, where we're welcoming more in our life, whatever that more is for each one of us, the paradigms will kick in through distraction, dissuasion, delay. I would love to write the book, but now, or there's a trip I want to take, but now, my daughter needs, braces. So now that trip is going to have to wait until, because there's in our minds, we think it's an either or versus What if it could be a both and? And lastly, the last alarm signal is a term called Defcon, which is a military term that I use, which means fear. We're our nervous system. We're about to post the blog, or do the podcast for the first time, or go to the networking group, or go on that blind date, or sign up for the 5K. And it literally will affect our nervous system, and we will feel a sense of terror. But again, we can work with discernment. This is a good thing that I'm doing, taking these steps, because this is leading me towards what I want. And I invite you to consider, saying to yourself, I'm willing to be uncomfortable in this moment in the interest of growth, because I want what's on the other side. I want the good health. I want the loving relationships. I want this form of creative expression in my business, or this is how I truly want to spend my time, with my family in this way. So I'm going to stop working on Fridays so that I can have more time to spend with my family, even though a fear might come up. Well, what if I lose clients, by changing my schedule and trusting as we lean into what feels expansive, spending time with your family, we discover as we take those steps that everything begins to rearrange itself in our facts and conditions to serve what matters to us. Because if this resonates with you, life is expanding through that time, that you're spending with your family, because all the kids, everyone is lifted up and raised as we are doing those things that feel life-giving to us. So recognizing distraction, dissuasion, Defcon, and then here's what we can do, to reframe this discomfort that I'm feeling. We can notice it. We can take in a few deep breaths. Breathing in slowly through our nose and exhaling out slowly like we're blowing out through a straw. A few of those deep breaths will shift us from that fight, flight, fear, to a sense of rest, digest, create. And in that moment, that's our opportunity to bring our objective to mind, connection with my child, connection with my spouse, growing my business, improving my health, taking time with my family, starting my day with meditation. I can bring that objective to mind, and I can say, this is simply an indication that I'm at the edge of what I've known. This fear that's coming up is telling me I'm at the edge of my comfort zone. I'm about to step out of what's been, and I'm stepping into something new. And even though I feel this fear, it doesn't mean that I can't do or be or have or go run that training run, or, sit down for 10 minutes, struggle through it, but yet I still do it. I do the meditation. This discomfort isn't an indication that I can't be, do, or have what I would truly love to experience. So I'm going to reframe it, and I'm going to recognize and tell myself, as long as I'm growing, fear is going to be there. And it's a companion on the journey. And I can have it, and it can come along with me, and it can get in the back seat. I don't have to let it be in the driver's seat. And we're going to take this step, and we're going to do it afraid, because we want the growth that this is going to bring. So those are some of the ways that we can notice the alarm signals, discern, and reframe what's coming up so that we can keep moving forward in growth, and see all of that not as an indication that there's something wrong or there's something missing or you can't, but rather, here's an opportunity. How committed am I? And I'm willing to take this action because what this is matters to me.
Yeah, so, I had a vision then when you were sharing that was, you're at that point where you're about to enter the other side, or, go to the new you or the new vision, and you freeze at that point and you feel all the fear about, growing into that new space. And then you said, so, you get all the fear signals coming, your heart starts racing and you're breathing, you're panting and you start sweating and then at that time, calm the nervous system, as you said. So, relax the nervous system. And that will allow you to refocus on the vision and reframe the thoughts that aren't serving you to move through that barrier into that new you or that new level of growth. I sort of pictured that person breaking through the ceiling, so to speak, like a Superman sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really does take courage, because at the level of fact, there may be, what looks like in our conditions, reasons to us for why we can't do what we want to do. If there's a certain event that you have this vision of an event that you want to hold, and you've tried, 10 locations and they all say no, you can't have the event here. Or, there's a business idea that you have and you go to bank to get a loan, to create this business idea. And we could easily let those conditions cause us to feel, that what we're moving in the direction of isn't possible. Or we can have our history, we can have our past experience, which could be very seductive to us to cause us to feel that who we want to be and what we would love to create isn't possible. So know that all of that, when it comes up, not if, but when, that it's not here as any evidence, that it's here to dial you down and keep you stuck. This is the opportunity to transform it. And there's a process and a growing season, if you will, as you keep taking those steps forward. You can trust that eventually your thoughts and your actions will bear, the fruit of what it is that you are endeavoring to live into.
And that reminds me of the acronym I saw about fear, and it was breaking fear down into each of its letters, and it's false expectations appearing real. So I thought that's always stuck with me, because often, as you said, if you allow that thought and you start, I guess, start putting energy towards that thought, then it can become so much bigger, and the fear is so much worse than what it actually is, because you conjure up in your imagination the doom and gloom of what that thought brings you, and only negative consequences, and you're not thinking through the rationale as to is that real? Is that true? Is it, as you said, you need to be in that calm state in order to do that reframing exercises. So, it's taking those deep breaths and calming the nervous system, and then you can, think through the logic of what that thought is bringing you, and it probably is false expectations appearing real.
Yes. And I've heard, and then the opposite of that acronym, face everything and rise.
Yes.
Face
Perfect.
it.
Yeah.
Face that action. Face it all. The parts of you that are doubtful, the parts of you that are afraid, the parts of you that are arguing for why you can't. And this is my moment to rise above and discover that moreness that is within each one of us, that capacity for greatness, by means of taking that step that we can take.
And just, I wanted to go further into this, because, this is where I see the younger people of today really wanting to do everything because they don't want to miss out. It's that fear of missing out, FOMO. So let's address that now, because I can see it really holding people back, because they're just trying to do everything, creating so much busyness. There's not enough time for the body to rest and regenerate and repair and do all the good things it does around looking after their health and well-being. And this constant busyness can result in excessive anxiety, and that over time can manifest into depression. So let's address FOMO.
Yes. Thank you for that. That's such a great topic for consideration and discussion. And I think, that recognition, as we think about the cause of our results, that everything starts with inside of us. And I invite us to consider and recognize, we don't get a choice about creating our results. We're constantly creating, and we're creating one of two ways. We're creating either by design, where we have an idea of who we want to be and what we want to experience and create, or we can tend to create, most of us, myself included, create by default, where we're just defaulting to a familiar pattern of operating, a familiar way of thinking, a familiar way of doing things. And so that fear, that drives us to do certain things where we're reacting, to different thoughts in our minds, different fears in our mind that will tell us, that we're missing out, that we've got to, and two, if we're feeling some form of discomfort ourselves where we may not know exactly what it is that we want to do or what's important to us, or maybe there is some steps that we know we need to take, rather than do that, sometimes we can default to letting ourselves be distracted on other things that drives us to think certain thoughts, feel that sense of anxiety and overwhelm, and then take those actions that do, whether it be, spending hours on on social media, or staying up super late, or not getting out and getting exercise, or maybe we're eating while we're on social media and we're stress eating, and we're impacting our digestion, and all of that can be just a default to a familiar way of thinking. And so my encouragement is to think about who do I want to be, and what would I love to experience today? How would I love to show up today, or what matters to me today? And as I'm getting ready, as I hear from that part of me that says, well, you need to be here and you need to, go to these things or do these things, and being driven by that fear, we can pause, take a few deep breaths, as we were talking about earlier, breathe ourselves into the present moment, which does move us out of that FOMO, reactive, condition-driven energy that we can tend to operate in, and just breathe ourselves into the present moment, where we can now ask an empowered question. What matters to me in this moment? How would I truly love to spend my time in this moment? What would be something I could do that would feel really good to me? What would I love? What would I truly love in this moment? And we can really hear from that authentic voice that knows the answer for the next steps, and that we can trust, maybe we don't want to spend those hours on social media, or we don't want to go to that party, or we don't want to engage in certain behaviors that we know really aren't good for us. And with those few deep breaths, and we come to the present moment, we can ask, what would I truly love in this moment? What's most important to me? And what feels like an empowered step that I could take, and really make a decision coming from and trusting, as I lean into what feels best and right and in my highest good in this moment. As we endeavor to practice with that, I invite you to consider, this is you beginning to create your moments by your design, coming from, your authentic truth, versus, letting that fear drive us into actions and behaviors and thoughts that have consequences that aren't good for us. So those are some of the ideas that are coming to me. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it's very much, it reminds me of something I read about Apple, the company, and how it develops great products that are, really in high demand. And essentially what they said is, in their development process of those products, the reason why they're so successful is because they say no more times than they say yes. And so they're, knocking back a whole lot of ideas before they go with one idea. And it very much aligns with what you just said, in a sense that, it's starting to question about all these, invites to this, or to go to this and this, or spend some extra time on social media, is reflecting back on, is it aligned to my true self? Is it taking me towards my vision? And if it's not doing either, then, the answer is no. And, you should be doing something, as you mentioned, either spending some extra time with your family or spending, time with your partner, or just doing something that's aligned to where you want to go, as opposed to something that's just a distraction that you think, oh, if I don't go there, then, I'll miss out on something. But I just, when you were explaining that and, giving the answer, I just thought of that analogy to Apple and how they design successful products.
Yes, that's a great example, and the reminder that ourselves know what is best and right for us. And it really does take courage, because the fear, the seduction, and those beliefs that we have, some of those limiting beliefs about, what if people will, I'm not likable, or all the many things that's just part of our programming, will rise up if we say no to this thing. And I invite us to know that is not the truth. The truth is, and that's one of the ways to begin to also really feed our courage, grow our courage and starve our fear. That in those moments we can remind ourselves, which I believe, I know the story about Apple, they were reminded of their mission, they went back to their why, and they let their vision and their why, I believe, determine the choices that they made coming from a vision. And so when those limiting beliefs come up, that's our moment to challenge them and to recognize that is not the truth. It's just a belief. And what if that's not true? And it does take courage to say no. And it is uncomfortable, but we can remind ourselves, I'm willing to be uncomfortable in this moment because I want the freedom, that it will bring by means of these other steps that I know are mine to take.
And I'm also thinking for those listeners that may be, hearing us talk about it, and they're thinking, well, it all sounds so easy, but I still can't figure it out. So how can the listeners that are really stuck and really want some additional help, how can they best connect with you?
Well, I know it does sound really easy, and it is not easy. And it's not a one and done thing. It's sometimes, for me personally, it's a moment to moment thing, and as long I remind myself, and I invite you to remind yourself, as long as I'm growing, I'm going to be, I need to see myself. I'm opening up to seeing myself in a new way. I'm open to thinking in a new way, to open up to some new ideas for new opportunities, for new results. And the challenge is, to notice what we're noticing. And the moment that we notice it coming up, that's our moment to pause, shift, take a few deep breaths, shift our energy, take a few deep breaths, and reframe it with an empowered thought. And it's a process and a practice. And so, working with you, Anthony, with the work that you do and really supporting people and making changes in their health, opening them up to some new ways of caring for and feeding their body and lifestyle changes, having support in our lives really is essential, because it helps us to stay center stream with that vision that we have for vibrant health, for well-being, for success in our career. And it's important to have support around us, because it's, we're humans and we're navigating the facts and the conditions of our lives. And how do we stay committed to, being the person who is having great health, having success in their career, and having support is essential, because we can consistently and support people in thinking in a new way, installing some new practices over a period of time that bring about those new results. So we we can only take the actions ourselves, but we need support around us as we as we live into and stretch into some new ways of being and acting to make welcome those greater results. And so for people that are interested in learning more about having support, they can connect with me through my website at stephaniepuente.com, and you can find that there in the show notes. And then I also have a couple of ebooks that people, if they're interested, they can download those. Those are filled with some great tips for working through fear, for discovering our purpose, for transforming those, fear thoughts, and learning some new empowered ways of thinking. And I also offer a complimentary discovery session where I help people to gain greater clarity about where they are, where it is that they would love to be, what's holding them back, and what the next steps are that they can take to begin moving in that direction.
Fantastic. I'll incorporate all those links in the show notes for listeners to go directly to. And your concluding thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to leave with the listeners today?
Yes. Well, I want to celebrate each and every person who is here today, who continues to come to this podcast, investing in your growth and your awareness. Know that just by being here, and every time you tune into Anthony's podcast, you are expanding your awareness and opening up to new ideas. So continue with that great work. And I want to close with a story that I think, a short, quick story that I think really underscores what we've talked about today. And this is an old teaching story about a young boy who was part of a village. And in this particular village, there was a rite of passage that all young boys went through to transition from boyhood to manhood. And this was something that the boys looked forward to for all the years leading up to that certain age point. And this young boy was now at that age point, and he was excited. He was thinking about what this was going to mean for him and what it was going to mean that he was now going to be a man. And at the same time, he also started having a lot of fear and a lot of doubt, because part of this rite of passage was to be away from the community. And he started having all these thoughts about what could go wrong and what could happen to him. And so he goes to the leader of the village and he says, it's like I feel so confused. I've got two dogs inside of me, and one dog is fighting and say I can't, and the other dog is saying, but I can, and they're fighting, and I don't know which one is going to win. And the leader of the village, being the wise person that he was, looked compassionately into the boy's eyes and he said, the one who says you can will win. And the young boy looked into the wise man's eyes and he said, how do you know that? And he said, because that is the dog that you will feed. And so why this matters to you is that at any given moment, as we notice what we're noticing, we can feed our fear. We can give it our attention. We know that where our thoughts go, energy flows, and we're going to think more of that. But as we notice what we are noticing, we can feed our courage. We can feed our vision. We can feed what matters to us, and we can remind ourselves the truth of who we are, and that you are more than this fear. You are more than your history, and that no matter what has come before, that has no bearing on what's possible. So remind yourself of those truths and ask yourself, what's a step that I can take, and feed that part of you, and know and claim, I'm willing to be uncomfortable in the interest of growth, because I want the results that this step is going to lead me to.
Fantastic. I love that story. Thanks for sharing. And for the listeners, continue to feed the dog that says you can. And there's another episode coming up with Stephanie, who will continue to feed your I can we're going to be talking about forgiveness. So that's up and coming. So stay tuned for more insightful episodes of Me and My Health Up. Thank you.